When I saw this morning's gospel, the parable of the prodigal son, I immediately wanted to go to the IGA in Big Fork, which is actually a harvest food, but no one ever calls it that. And I wanted to buy a lottery ticket because, by God, this was my lucky day. This is, without a doubt, my favorite parable in the Bible. This and a side order of Paul's letter to the Romans saying that nothing can separate us from the love of God, and Jesus saying in John's Gospel, "When I am lifted up, I will draw all to myself," are about all I need for the proverbial being shipwrecked on a desert island, and you can only take so much reading material. And it's great, just great that this reading happens in the middle of Lent because we can always use a break if we've just been beating the daylights out of ourselves for fudging on our Lenten disciplines, like me, profoundly fudging on our Lenten disciplines. Before talking about the parable, let me say something more about this breather in the middle of Lent. The fourth Sunday of Lent is known as Laetare Sunday. If the church has them, you wear rose-colored vestments, and in some places, flowers appear back where they are today at the altar. And this happens because the Latin word laetare just simply means rejoice. You rejoice because you are a bit over halfway through Lent, and therefore you are more than halfway to Easter. And so, with respect to rose vestments, if you mix the purple or the violet of Lent with the white of Easter, you get the color rose. We don't happen to have those, but underneath my vestments today, I am wearing a rose-colored Hawaiian shirt to at least get the spirit going. In the very early church, those who were preparing for baptism, which is something that they would do throughout the entirety of Lent, received the creed on this day. And then they anticipated with great joy, even more so, what was coming down the pike for them on the great vigil of Easter. Prior to the Reformation, the Pope, after celebrating Mass on this particular Sunday, would leave church carrying a golden rose as a sign of joy. So Germans began calling this day Rosensonntag, the Sunday of the Rose. That's the reason we lighten up and carry that tradition on. Well, to do exactly that, you cannot do better than have before you the parable of the prodigal son. In this story this morning, we find the irresponsible son who took his dad's inheritance even before he was enjoying his reward in everlasting life, which you all have to agree is tacky at best. And he headed for town. And rather than being sober and thrifty and clean like the hard-working older brother who was also obedient, honest, and decent, the younger son blew the whole thing on fast living. Of course, when the money and the adventure ran out, he needed to find shelter from the storm. And so he headed home, composing his speech of surrender and humility along the way. "I have sinned before heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands." And that, you have to admit, with respect to groveling, was a pretty good plan. But it was totally derailed by the father's love. All this time, while the kid was living the life of Riley, the father was looking for him, maybe standing every day at the top of the driveway, yearning, hoping, praying that he would return. And then one day, there the boy was in the distance. And what is critical, really important for everybody to remember, is that the dad ran down to greet him, and he interrupted the speech with his embrace before the son could even finish his appeal. And he said to the slaves, "Get a robe, the best one, and a ring and sandals, and let's party, for this son of mine was dead, and he's now alive again, was once lost, and now is found." And even before the son could ask to be treated as just someone to tend the animals and mow the front yard, He was welcomed back entirely, completely into the fold. So the moral to this story thus far is simply this. You and I are so beloved, so embraced, so valued, that only St. Paul could really say it adequately. Nothing can separate you from the love of God. Nothing. And anyone begins to object and say, yeah, but what about? We are to cheerfully interrupt and say nothing means nothing. Nothing. Well, as we all know, the party began and the sound of it spread far and wide, wide enough so that the good son, the older brother, the one who had been keeping score as to just how honorable he was in comparison to his kid brother, came to his father filled with righteous indignation, with which most of us, if we're honest about it, could sympathize, right? After all, why didn't the older son ever get to party with his friends? If anyone deserved it, we all know he did. Well, the father heard all that and responded basically by saying, you never partied with your friends because you never chose to party with your friends. All that I have is yours. And the implication of that is absolutely abundantly clear. You, older son, could have been rejoicing all along. And why? Well, hard as it might seem, on a Sunday that's called Lighten Up Sunday or Rejoicing Sunday, the reason one can say that is that death has taken its course. And in death, there's actually good news. Quite simply, the father was dead to the idea that one had to earn joy and love and companionship. Everyone was given that in spades by grace alone. The younger son was dead to the life that he had lived out on the road, all the mistakes that he had made, and most importantly, he was dead to the fact that all he could imagine for the future was living life as a slave who was steeped in guilt. And as my late hero, Robert Farrar Capon, said, even the fattened calf, the actual Jesus character in this parable, also died in order that resurrected life could be celebrated around him. Summing it all up in his book, Parables of Grace, Capon had the father saying the same in no uncertain terms to the older son. This is what he wrote. The only thing that matters is that fun or no fun, your brother finally died. And now he's alive again. Look, we're all dead here and we're having a terrific time. You, on the other hand, are alive and miserable, and worse yet, you're standing out here in the yard as if you were some kind of a beggar. Why can't you see? You own this place, Morris, and the only reason you're not enjoying it is because you refuse to be dead to your dumb rules about how it should be enjoyed. So do yourself and everybody else a favor, drop dead, forget your stupid life, go inside and pour yourself a drink. As Capon then wrote, God will say to everybody, you were dead and you are alive again. You were lost and now you are found. Put on a funny hat and step inside. And that, dear friends, is how you lighten up today. Now and again, of course, every one of us knows themselves as prodigal children. We realize we have blown something or another. And it's important to repent, to turn around. But it's also important to realize that God does not wish us to waste an awful lot of time groveling. It takes energy away from running back to the Father. And to celebrate lightening up, we are similarly called to stand at the top of the driveway ourselves, willing to be receptive to those who are coming home, people with whom we may have been alienated, and greet them with, my heavens, look at you. You were dead, and now you're alive. You were lost, and now you are found. So, find something rose to wear today, and if you feel like it, Say from Isaiah 66, that which gives the name its day, Laeter Jerusalem et Conventium. Rejoice, Jerusalem. Come together. And then on the way home, put on a funny hat, for you were dead and now are alive, and go to the Dairy Queen and order the Oreo brownie earthquake or something like that, and take this mid-season break for all it can be, and rejoice. Amen.